On March 9th, 1997, rapper Christopher Wallace, also known as Notorious Big, was attending an after party for the Soul Train Music Awards, and upon his departure from the venue, he was shot and killed. 10 days later, his family and friends all gathered in Manhattan to say goodbye, and what an interesting day it was. We're going to talk about that today. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all. It begins right now. So here we are in Manhattan on Madison Avenue at the famous Frank E. Campbell Funeral Home. They have done, just about anybody who's anybody, from Joan Crawford's funeral to the Gershwins, Judy Garland, John Lennon, and of course, Christopher Wallace, Notorious Big. 10 days after he was killed, they had a massive funeral here. The streets were just completely crowded and lined with fans wanting to pay their respects. They had 350 invited guests, including many that were celebrities and friends of Biggie's, including Queen Latifah, Foxy Brown, Sister Souljah, Spinderella, Salt and Peppa, Busta Rhymes, Run DMC, Little Cease, Lil Kim, Mary J. Blige, Flavor Flav. There were just tons of people there, and the actual service, Big's mother, Valletta, would read scriptures, and of course his friend Sean Combs, who was the head of his label, would do the eulogy, and Faith Evans, who was Big's wife, but they had parted before his passing, ended up singing a gospel song, Walk With Me, Lord. It was an open casket, or half open. You could see him from the waist up, and he was dressed in a white suit with a kind of a white fedora. Now, after the service, things got pretty crazy because they decided to take Big's casket, which there are photos of it coming out these doors, and they loaded it into a hearse, and then a procession of more than a dozen stretch limousines and 2 flower cars and his hearse carrying his body would make its way back to his home. They actually wanted to take him over the Brooklyn Bridge and back past his childhood home, the apartment on St. James. So we're gonna do that same route, go over there. I'm gonna show you where he grew up on that 3rd floor apartment and tell you a little bit more about what happened with that procession. So apparently the route was down Madison Avenue, onto the FDR, and then onto the Brooklyn Bridge. Once the procession got on to St. James, where his apartment was for the first 20 years, it took 10 minutes for the procession to make its way down that road. There were so many people there. So this building in front of us is the childhood home of Christopher Wallace, Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, all the names that he went by. This is where it all started for him. And a mother who was a Jamaican immigrant, Valletta, who was a single mother, raised him alone, and he would often sing about the one-room apartment that they shared, and this was it. Kind of made it sound like it was pretty bad, but his mother would say that it wasn't as bad as he would make it sound. Said a lot of what he would sing about and write about would be things that he saw, experienced, also partially kind of an alter ego. But she would say that when he was a young boy, he was extremely gifted. He won English awards. He was a great writer, a great poet. He went to private school that she sent him to while she was working. She was actually a preschool teacher, amongst other things, just trying to keep the family afloat, making sure he had everything he needed. And he was always known as Big Chris because he was a big boy. He was overweight, but that was part of her culture. In her culture, a healthy boy was a big boy. So he was going to school and he was doing really well, but she couldn't keep her eye on him all the time. And, you know, eventually as he got older and he went to public school, eventually to high school, he started hanging out with people on the street. He was kind of lured in by the appeal of the streets, the people selling drugs with lots of money and clout. They look cool, you know, and so he started hanging out with street gangs and started stealing and selling drugs. And she found out about it and told him, you know, you can't do this. And he quit going to school there for a while. She told him he couldn't stay in the apartment if he wasn't going to school. Time he would start making music, rapping on the streets, and he knew people that had a turntable that he could practice on and things like that. And so his world shifted from being a great student who at one time wanted to be a graphic artist to just being on the street corner right at the end of this street selling drugs and rapping every day. And he would say, you know, looking back on it, he wasn't proud of it, but he would say, you know, I would see my mom going out, leaving for work in the morning while I was still out, you know, selling drugs, still hustling, as he would say, just still out here on the streets hustling. And she eventually told him, you know, you can't stay here. So he moved out of this place when he was 20 years old. But if we go down to right down on the street corner, I noticed as I was coming in, there's several murals and remembrances to Biggie. And right here at the end of the block, where his childhood home was, is a little mural to him here, his graduation. And then also on every corner, basically, they got one right over here. And also over here on this corner. But they have a big mural down here we're gonna check out. Of course, the hearse brought his body in the casket down through here, through his old neighborhood, so everybody could pay their respects. There's a mural half mile away from his childhood home. The streets were lined with people who loved him, and apparently a bunch of people started getting on parked cars, standing and dancing on parked cars, and so the police were there to initially just make sure that nothing got out of hand. They started trying to get people off the cars, and it kind of turned into a crazy scene with 10 people, including a reporter, getting arrested. So this is where it all ended for the physical form of Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G. The B.I.G. he would always say meant business before game, or business instead of game. They brought his casket here and they cremated him here. He does not have a proper burial place or a headstone or anything like that that you can go visit. As far as I know, his ashes were split between his mother and Faith Evans and the kids. I believe they had the other half. Now they do honor his memory. He had 2 children And they do honor his memory every year by doing a fundraiser to help get supplies for underprivileged schools in his name, and that's been going on for several years. His mother would say, you know, Big would sing about things he saw and things he heard, and a lot of it was filth, but she kind of made it seem like, you know, it was a movie. He was telling a story. He was a storyteller, and sometimes the story is filthy. And unfortunately, with the day and age he was living in, and with the East Coast, West Coast rap gang violence, and Tupac being killed a few months before, just kind of a retaliation kill that has never been officially solved. They seem to know who all was implicated in it, but they've never been able to actually make anyone punished for this. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I was not a huge fan of rap, but I was a big fan of Notorious Big. There was something about his music that I did love, so thank you all for watching and caring and giving this video a chance. Thank you Chanel Simon, Sharon McCarty, and Julie Powell for becoming my newest Patreons and helping to support this channel. We will see you all next time. Have a great night, and goodbye, and rest in peace, Christopher Wallace.